How we doing, people? Welcome back, Gooners. Welcome back, football people. Welcome back to Football's 12th Man podcast. I thought I'd do a show and a little bit of last night and a little bit towards the weekend and kind of, well, I suppose a bit of everything in relation to Arsenal. And who better to bring on than Albert JTV? What you doing, my guy? How you saying?
Not bad, man. Potsy put the call in. I was having my last bit of KFC. I was biting into that chicken. I thought, you know what? I've got to squeeze Potsy in, man, before this Friday night. So, yeah, man. It's my first time on the channel, man.
First time on the channel, bro. You're very welcome. Good to see you. Get yourself over to Albert JTV. People, follow on socials, AUMOH57 on Twitter and Instagram. Albert's over 1,000 now, so make sure you can smash the subscribe on this and on Albert's. Get us both up to the 1,000 mark that we need. Albert needs another 2,000. I'm so close to 6,000. So let's get us both up there, people. Come on. You know what you need to do. Smash the like and the subscribe button. It's absolutely free and it will put smiles on our faces. Something that will not put a smile on our faces is performances like last night, Albert. I can't lie, bro. It wasn't exactly positive in parts. It was very negative, I would say, man. But I did a bit of a post-match show last night and I just spoke about the true facts that PSV wanted it more than us. And I look at our strength in depth and I worry. And that's why I wanted to concentrate on a couple of players in particular and look at what we might need in the coming weeks leading up to the January transfer window, which of course will be around quicker than we expect due to the World Cup. So first of all, let's talk about last night. It was a little bit lackluster in parts, Albert, and some of the players just ain't up to it, man. So what's your thoughts on what you saw last night, bro?
Oh, Potsy, where do I start, man? So with the PSV side, I think when they came to the Emirates last week, what we saw last night, I thought I would see what I saw yesterday. They set up very defensive when we played them at the Emirates, but all Arsenal fans knew. We knew, Dan, people watching it knew this would be a very, very different game. Arsenal went pretty strong, to be fair. I mean, when I did my predicted lineup, for example, I think there's only three players was out from my original team. So I thought, okay, Arteta's not messing around. He wants to get the win. It's not just about getting the point. But it's a shame, Dan, because we start games well, man, this season. But yesterday, where do I start? When you play in Europe, Dan, one of the biggest things, man, is your retention of the ball. You have to keep the ball well when you're in possession. Centrally, our ball retention was awful. It's very, very sloppy. Lokonga, Erdegaard, there was no consistency of play. The danger men who we feared in regards to PSV was Xavi Simons. What, 19, Dan, is he? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he looks decent, bruv.
Yeah. And obviously Cody Gakpo, who's second in goal contributions behind Haaland. So he's come with a big bill in it. And they came to play, Dan, and they carved us open. And the problem was with Arsenal, if you're going to play a high line, you've got to retain the ball better, and you can't have turnover possession the way we did, man. It wasn't good to watch, and it didn't get much better, mate, to be honest.
It didn't get much better. I actually agree with Johan here that, you know, the only positive, I suppose, is thankfully we could afford to lose that game and still look like we're going to top the group and go through. But it wasn't really about that for me. It wasn't really about people losing their heads because we lost the game. I think everybody was concerned about this happening and us losing the game quite easily and comfortably. And I do believe personally that we got quite lucky that it was only three of the goals. You know, 5 times they put the ball in the back of the net, which is worrying. Some people would look at that in a positive light, Albert, and think that our defence was so good in terms of its high line that we were actually catching them offside a bit. So fair play for those that say that. But when you look at 5 times then putting the goal in the net, it don't look too good, man. It don't fill me with confidence. But I think it just means that even if we make only 2 or 3 changes, mate, the drop-off is massive. And I think that although we saw Saliba, we saw Tomiyasu, Tierney, Ramsdale, we saw Saka and Jesus come on, we had Xhaka in there, Martinelli was playing. It doesn't really matter, does it? Because when you drop 2 or 3 out of that side, the players that come in are just not at the right standard. And that then completely loses the flow of the game, Albert.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. You see, the problem is when the fringe players come in, they're meant to give the manager a headache, first and foremost. I don't think any of the fringe players have done that. Eddie, in small bursts, if you combine probably Europa League with his Premier League performances where he's come on, Lokonga, I think for me with him, and it's not being harsh, Dan. I have this big thing with kind of fellow football supporters or within our own fan base where they say a player's young. I'm like, when you kind of look at it, I don't think 23 is that young in terms of playing first team football. If you're a Rooney age at 16 bursting through, or a Harvey Elliott at Liverpool who's 16, or a Milner when he came through at Leeds, he was 16, then it's different. But Lokonga's 23. I thought he should go out on loan at the start of the season, but then Arsenal kind of made it clear that they was going to keep him. And Dan, I'm guessing the reason why they kept him was because of squad depth, which we keep talking about since last season coming through to this season. But I think the problem is what is highlighted, not just yesterday, when the fringe players do come in, like I said, to the start of the sort of segment, I'm not sure they're good enough. I take the point that, for example, like Mohamed El Neni probably would have come into a game like this, but he's injured at the moment, unfortunately. But it is a worry that we do have a thin squad. And then before I finish, I made a point last season, and I always make it this point because I like to repeat some points sometimes, Dan, like hear my own voice. But when we played West Ham last season, right? I know it's a different stage of the season, but people will understand what I mean. They played 11 more games than us. 11. 3 months worth of football. That's because they had Europa League and they had European football. And on top of that as well, Dan, they had the same problem we had, thin squad. Now, people are going to say, oh yeah, but you know what happens when we get into Champions League? We're not in the Champions League yet. So just hold your horses with that. But I think the point is being back in European competition, combined with the fact that we've got a very threadbare, thin squad, is absolutely been shown in a lot, particularly our last two second half performances in the Premier League and probably the game yesterday.
I think you're making great points, bro, and I really do. And I want to ask this question from Johan in the chat to you, Albert, because he says, I do wonder, even with a full-strength team yesterday, we would still lose the game. And I understand what he means for the pure fact that against Leeds, against Southampton, and in the Europa League now, for 3 or 4 games, we've looked lackluster, we've looked tired, we've looked jaded. We haven't looked right in the side of energy. We've looked a little bit slow. We've definitely not looked right up top. I think that there's been goals lacking in this side, and we're now starting to see the consistency of the goals that we're leaking again. Some worrying signs creeping in, and not enough for us to lose our head. We're still top of everything at the moment. We can't really get any better. But what we can do is get better with our performances at the moment, Albert. Does it worry you that perhaps this side is just literally 4 or 5 players too short of doing something special this season?
That as well. And I think one of the biggest issues as well, although we've done well at the start of the season in terms of our goals return, we have done very well. When you're in the ascendancy and you're either not putting teams away or you're not getting that second goal to make it a little bit more comfortable. Southampton was a perfect example, Dan. I said it. We went 1-0 up. We had a 10-15 minute window after we got the goal to go 1-0 up where we needed to get the second, and we didn't. And that was the issue. So when you don't kill teams off or be on the ascendancy to go 2-3 up, you put yourselves under pressure, particularly when you concede the goal. And you've seen it in terms of particularly our second half performances. Either we haven't started well, or it's a mixture of things, Dan. I think, and one of the key things people mention, one of the key words people always mention is intensity. And we've lacked that yesterday. We lacked it in the second half against Southampton, and actually a lot of the second half against Leeds. So those are back-to-back games. So that's got to be a concern as an Arsenal fan. Of course it is.
Massive concerns in certain areas of the pitch, mate, because I don't feel that we have any cover for some of those positions. And when we do have an alternative, the drop-off is massive. I want to stick with Lokonga, and then I want to move on to Eddie and Nketiah, because they're the two that people are mentioning a lot at the moment. Now, when I look at Sambi Lokonga, I'm going to take you back to when we signed him. Yaya Toure figure, a Belgium international, somebody that was going to be the next best thing. I was getting excited. I hadn't seen much of him. But what I've seen, Albert, is no Yaya Toure figure. A player that I don't believe has international quality, and somebody that still doesn't have a position. And he reminds me of a piece of a jigsaw puzzle that we're still trying to find in that puzzle somewhere. Where is he going to fit? We still don't know. We don't know whether he's going to be playing as an 8, as a 6. Is he a higher type player? What can he do? Ball retention? Can he pass well? Can he tackle well? Is he good off the ball? I'm still questioning a lot of these things. And I know that people needed to see the back of Matteo Guendouzi because of the stuff off the pitch. But on the pitch, he's nowhere near as good. Now, when you get rid of Matteo Guendouzi for his problems, you need to replace someone as good as him. And I would argue that Maitland-Niles and Lucas Torreira, some of these players that we've got in the past, were showing more than what Sambi Lokonga has done. Now, I understand that he's not a player for now and he's one for the future, but I go back on what you've said. He's 24 nearly. He's not a player that we look at and think, in 5 years' time, you're going to be wicked. Because in 5 years' time, he's going to be touching 30. So I really don't see this player as someone that's going to be in the first team at Arsenal. And I don't know if that's being too harsh. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the player and where you think his future is, mate.
Yeah, it's a good question, mate. You know what he does, right? He's very neat and tidy. I understand that. But that's probably a lot of the time for me when the opposition isn't pressing you that high. But I think the problem with Dan, I think it's a problem with a lot of midfield players, which drives me mad. Actually, is I look at players sometimes when they get the ball, particularly midfield players, and I always ask the question: can you release that ball a bit quicker? And the answer is yes. There's times when he holds on to it for too long. I personally think he's played enough games in English football to either adapt it to the speed of the game and two, to move the ball a little bit quicker. And these are things that with training, and these are things that you should sharpen up on in terms of your ability to move the ball a bit quicker. To me, that's what it comes down to. And, you know, maybe for me, that's why he is a fringe player and not knocking on the door to be a first teamer, because who's he going to displace really? Even with our thin squad as it is, he's not going to get in ahead of Xhaka because he's got a different advanced role in the team, and he's not going to come in for Thomas Partey. I don't think he'd even get more game time, particularly if El Neni was fit. So it's a tough one. I just think, yeah, with him, I think yesterday there was moments of real sloppiness, but I just think he needs to get his head in gear in terms of moving the ball a lot quicker, particularly for a player in his position in the team.
Yeah, Lokonga's got something about him on the ball. I think on the ball he looks okay. He's always looking for that forward pass. And I think when you look at the creativity and vision, there's a little bit of a glimpse of what he could do. But there's so much that I think he needs to work on. And at the age of 23, I think maybe you should have learned that by now. I don't like his off-the-ball stuff. I don't think he's a defensive midfield. He's definitely not got any tackling ability about him. I don't see him putting a foot in. And I think when you look at the Arsenal midfielders of the last 10, 15 years, you can't look at the Gilbertos and Vieiras, but you can't even look like the Songs or the Coquelins or the Lucas Torreiras for me. So I just don't see Arsenal quality in this player. And people are saying it's harsh. I actually stuck up for him quite a lot last season because I felt that he was managed quite badly. I felt that he was just put in the middle on his own against Brighton when Xhaka was playing at left back. When he did play, he was next to Charlie Patino against Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup. And he was just expected to just crack on in the deep end. And I didn't feel that that was right. And whether or not that's affected him or not, I'm not so sure. But certainly, I can't see by using the eye test anything that makes me go, wow. But I wanted to move on from Lokonga and think that if we were to see, let's say, replace him, El Neni's still out injured. Yeah. Do you think that's a position now that we just need to go and get somebody in January? And if so, what do you think will happen, mate?
Dan, it's an addition we needed, really, to be honest, at the start of the season, maybe even the last couple of 100%. Years, to be honest with you. For some people, they were not really keen on the likes of Basuma. I know he's gone to Tottenham, obviously. Sangare played yesterday against us. I guess it depends, Dan, what they're looking for, Arsenal. Because they can't. I can't imagine, for example, Arteta and Edu are happy with in terms of the depth for they can't be. We've done well to get to this point of the season where we are, you know, top of the league and top of the Europa League and top of the domestic league. It's mad, but it depends who Dan, there's always players out there. It just depends on your club's network of how serious they are about getting players in. The Tielemans rumours won't go away. I know a lot of people are kind of to and fro in, and he maybe lacks something defensively, but he would add something to Arsenal potentially, Yuri Tielemans. Listen, there's other players out there, I'm sure many, myself, maybe yourself, can think of, not at the top of my head right now, but I think Arsenal do need, I would have thought that these guys would have already done their due diligence in terms of who they're going to bring in. And I hope they've got somebody in mind, because they need to have somebody in mind. There needs to be not just one option, two options. If you can't get the A option, you get the B option. Maybe even a C option done possibly out there. But there's our players out there.
100% there is, man. Big up, King. Thanks for the super chat, my bro. Hope you're doing well, my friend, and thank you for watching. Says Arteta liked Lokonga because he's a submissive personality. Maitland-Niles and Guendouzi are ballsy characters, and we're now lacking because of Arteta's inability to manage them. And we could use them now, simple as. I think he's got a good point there. I think with Maitland-Niles and Guendouzi, Maitland-Niles was a little bit laid back. Guendouzi had some problems off the field, and they just did not get on, and they clashed. And I think that he's right there, King. Big up the super chat, man, and big up yourself. I think personally, those two characters right now in the dressing room might not be what players need, but in terms of the quality on the pitch, he's definitely, well, both of them are definitely, in my opinion, better than Lokonga. So it's a strange one that we've managed to not replace some of those players. We were overclustered in midfield, Albert, right? We had Maitland-Niles, Torreira, Guendouzi, and Chakarel, Nenny, Lokonga, and Partey. And now, all of a sudden, we're really, really struggling to put backup players out on a Europa League game. Xhaka has to play there most of the time. So it's definitely a position I look at. The one player I want to mention to you about and ask if you know much about is Danilo. Over in Brazil, in Palmeiras, we've got a kid, 21 years old, defensive midfielder that Edu and Arteta like. Rumours are we wanted to try and get him in the summer, but they weren't having none of it and said, wait till our season's done. And in January, that will be happening. From what we believe, £26 million for a defensive midfielder, 21-year-old Brazilian international Danilo. It looks like it could get done now, but what would you make of this signing if it was to happen?
Firstly, two watches. I was going to say you beat me to it. Yeah, the guy mentioned it, Danilo, in the chat. He was rumored, was it this in the start of the summer? Listen, if I need to know more about him personally speaking, because I've heard a lot about him, but I need to sort of do my homework with him. But listen, he's obviously somebody they've identified and potentially want to bring in. Listen, him. Or I don't think this is a viable option, by the way, is SMS Milokovic-Savic, who is a player, really is a player. But to get him out of Lazio would be very difficult. The guy's been there a number of years, 250 odd appearances, 27s in the peak of his powers. So listen, one of those two, then I would be happy, to be honest, particularly Milokovic-Savic. But I don't think that's realistic, Dan. Danilo probably is a bit more realistic in terms of that. This is somebody they've also clearly identified and they're clearly monitoring. So if he's as good as the feeders that have been put out about him, then mate, we need to see him. We need to see him at the carpet and hopefully not just come in terms of adding squad depth, but actually bringing quality and giving the manager some headaches in terms of first team appearances.
Yeah, listen, a lot of people are agreeing in the chat and saying that Danilo would be a great addition. King has said, Chaitanya said, let's be real, Milinkovic-Savic ain't coming in January. I tend to agree. I think that's more of a summer deal. I'm not so sure that Lazio would be interested in that, and he is now cup-tied. But I would love him. I like everything about him. I think he's a really good midfielder and someone that I look at and think can do a little bit of everything. Let's come to this super chat from Abel. Big up yourself, man. Thanks for the super chat. It says, over the last almost 15 years, Arsenal have always been 3 or 4 players short of being an elite football club. Same old Arsenal this year, SMH. Listen, I believe that is absolutely bang on. And do you know what? I wouldn't even say last 15 years. I'd say it's been longer than that. Arsenal have always been quite lucky at times when we have been short. And I think what we've done now, certainly, like Abel says, in the last 10, 15 years, has just been, Arsenal were only 2 or 3 players away. How many times have you heard that, Albert? Arsenal only 2, 3 players away. Feels like we've been saying that forever. And then we lose a few more players, and then we need a little bit more extra. And then we get 6, and then they say we really needed 9, so we're only 3 more players away. And then what happens is we lose another couple when we buy 1 in, and they say, we're still only 2 away. It feels like we've still only been 2 away for, 15 years now. So I understand what you're saying, and big up yourself, and thanks for the super chat, man. This Milinkovic-Savic, Tielemans, Danilo, I think the good thing is, Albert, whether they come or they don't, we're being linked with the right positions that are needed at the club.
Yeah.
Now, I think personally we need 2 midfielders, one to back up Xhaka if anything happens, and one to back up Partey. Lokonga and El Neni, I'm not so sure that they are that guy. I think when El Neni comes in, he does very much similar to what Lokonga does, just with that little bit extra. He keeps it calm. He sprays the ball forward. He's not going to set the world alight. Yeah, he's had some really good games where he's controlled the midfield, particularly last season at Chelsea, at home to Man United, and a couple of seasons ago where him and Partey were at Old Trafford together. I thought he was exceptional. We beat him 1-0 with the Aubameyang penalty. But other than that, when we look at El Neni's season, it's never been blistering. It's always just been, his time at Arsenal has been decent. Okay, £7 million worth. We need someone who's a £37 million worth centre midfielder that's going to come and compete with Xhaka and Partey. So I look at that and think, yeah, midfield is a massive option. I think Partey, we need to wrap him in bubble wrap, mate. We cannot get this guy done. He cannot get injured, because when he's on the pitch, everything seems to be a lot better. When Lokonga's there, or even El Neni, there is a downgrade and a drop-off. And that does worry me, Albert. I can't lie, man. So midfield is going to be interesting. I want to talk about the front men right now, okay? Because King has put in another super chat. Big up yourself, bro. He says, I'm also concerned about Gabriel Jesus. He needs competition and goals. Let's talk about the competition for Gabriel Jesus, because at the moment, bruv, there ain't any. Eddie Nketiah, yes, he scored some goals and got us from 4th place to 5th. Sorry, that's very negative of me and toxic when I say that. But that's basically all he did. He scored 3 goals at the end of the season, and everyone said, give him the number 14 on his back and £100,000 a week contract, because he's got us from 4th to 5th. It's a madness for me. I never understood it. And it looks to me as if now it was a bit of a strange one. I do personally feel that Eddie Nketiah has a lot of nice attributes. I like his intensity, Albert. I like his energy. I like his drive. I think off the ball he looks better. I think he's a lot stronger than he was last season. But I don't have the faith in front of goal. And last night, wow, I see him scuff shots. I see everything coming off wrong. Nothing going right for him. He scored a couple of goals in the Europa League against Zurich and Bodo, but are we really going to say that's enough for us to have real competition for Gabriel Jesus? I think we need another forward, Albert. I really do, bro.
Yeah, we do. And it's not just we need another forward, man. It's the type of forward we need, mate. We need a bit more of a focal point and a bit more physicality. You look at the likes of who came on in the second half against us yesterday, De Jong, a Mitrovic type
different profile striker, yeah,
would be perfect. And the thing is, these are not just guys you hit and hope you just hit them as a target, man. They got a bit more than that. They both got a bit more than that. For example, those are 2 strikers I can think of off the top of my head. But I remember speaking to an Arsenal fan when we played in North London derby. He said to me, "We didn't enough of centre forward." I said, "You're right." I said, "You're spot on. We do." Because the thing is, Eddie's he's been given a bit more game time, and I don't just mean that in terms of Europa League. He's obviously featured in a few of the Premier League games as well. And the thing is, when you're in a position where he's in, where he comes into the team done, and he's had opportunities to score, and he hasn't taken them. Now, if you're putting the ball in the back of the net, me and you are not having conversations like this, because we know that we can rely on him. But unfortunately, we can't. So now, this is not about, getting behind the players, because we're going to do that as Arsenal fans anyway. But as I always say, Dan, your own set of eyes don't lie to you. And when he's come on recently, when he's featured in the team, you have to ask yourself something. Is he good enough? And is he going to get us the goals? Because to be fair, Dan, we are playing a style of football this season where we are creating a lot of more chances. We are creating a lot more opportunities. And he has missed some. And he should have been putting the ball in the back of the net, and he hasn't. That would help his cause in terms of confidence and giving the manager a bit more of a headache, even though Arteta already likes him anyway. Well, hence the reason why he's still at the club. But it's a massive, massive concern, because Jesus hasn't scored since Tottenham. He actually should have scored a lot more goals than he already has done. And that's a constructive criticism. Arsenal fans have seen it. He's had plenty of chances to score more goals than he should have had a couple more hat-tricks. He should have some hat-tricks that Haaland's had this season as well, because he's had the chances to score. But we kind of knew this with Jesus. Like, he does miss chances, which strikers are going to do, obviously, but he needs to be more, he does need to be more clinical. And I don't need to tell him that, because he knows that himself. But he's been a very good acquisition for us. But in sort of going back to Eddie, the jury is out. And has been out for quite a while with him. Yes, he scored the odd important goal, Dan, but there's going to be games where you're not going to get a lot of chances as a striker. Let's be honest, as well as we've done this season. And are you, as an Arsenal fan, going to hang your hat on Eddie Nketiah? Because you've got to remember, Jesus is one booking away from a suspension as well.
Listen, there's not only Jesus as well. You've got Saliba, that's one booking away from a suspension. I think Granit Xhaka as well. Jesus, and then might even be one more, but it's mad. Listen, Albert, the January transfer window is going to come around quickly. We've literally got about 3 or 4 more games, and then it's the World Cup. After the World Cup, we've got a couple of games in, I think, Brighton and West Ham, and then the transfer window is open. What would you like to see happen, bro? Let me ask you that to start with, and then we'll discuss it a bit more to wrap up.
Dan, I think we missed out one other position as well. Left centre back. because
Go on.
I think that's the only reason why Gabriel's played a lot of the Europa League games. Because if we had a more adequate backup in terms of their centre back, then he wouldn't have played them games. Arteta would have rested him, but he's had to play him because he's already left-sided centre back. Obviously, we sent Pablo Mari on loan. Hope he gets better soon. By the way, and
Horrendous that.
yeah, awful. So left centre back, striker, and a centre midfield player. Those they're three key positions we need to address. The only thing that worries me, Dan, and has done for a number of times with Arsenal when it comes to the January transfer window, is it's not been good reading, man. We get told as fans, January's a difficult transfer window, which I've never bought, by the way, because if other clubs can do business, and I don't mean throwing the kitchen sink at it, then Arsenal, listen, Dan, always strengthen from a position of strength. 100 million%. We failed to do it last season and it cost us. We do not want the same thing happening again. So, listen, the World Cup, we're having a strange year this year with the World Cup, don't get me wrong, but this is crucial to our season. Not just cementing top 4, getting top 3 in the league, personally. But minimum, I expect to see 3 players come in. Minimum.
Yeah, I think we have to. What we're going to do and what we think we need are 2 very different things. And I will say this, if we don't do anything, I think this could crumble. I really do. And I'm not talking about a title challenge crumbling. I'm talking about our top 4 hopes crumbling because it really is that serious. When you have 11 or to 12 players that are playing, when you have 14 to 15 that we have got, with 3 of them injured, it means you've got 11, 12 players at the moment that we're trying to rotate. And that is not going to do well for us. So when you're Newcastle, like we were last season, 1 game a week, you might be all right. You might be all right with 15, 16 players. But actually, when you've got 15, 16 players and you want to try and go into the deep stages of both the domestic cups, win the Europa League and try and title challenge with City, that's really going to be difficult to do. So I think we need to be really realistic and manage expectation with this window. But I don't think it's being unrealistic to expect at least 2 players to be coming in.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about a forward player and a midfield player. Now, I'm going to ask you the same question in a minute, so I'm going to give you some thinking time, Albert. But I'm going to ask you what sort of names you want to be coming in at the door in January, because as much as we think it's easier, or not as hard as people think, I do feel that January, for whatever reason, has been over the years very difficult to go and get a top player that's playing at the top of his game. Now, we've done it before with Aubameyang, we've done it before with Arshavin at Arsenal, and we've seen players that are big names go in the January transfer window, so it's not impossible. But I look at it right now and think, where are we short? Now, I agree with you. Left centre-back is a problem because Gabriel's playing every game there, or most games there, right? If he's not playing there, Holding has to play there, and it ain't quite good enough. At right wing, when Saka's not there and Marquinhos is not at the moment in the mix, we're going to need somebody else there. Up top, when Gabriel Jesus is out, Eddie's proven he's not right. When Partey's out, Lokonga's proven he's not right. When Xhaka's out, which we're lucky he hasn't been, does Zinchenko have to come in there, or does somebody else play like Lokonga? Again, not quite good enough, and we look at a drop-off. So there's 4 or 5 positions, I believe, by the summer of next year we can start to look at. But for January, for me, I think a good summer would be Danilo coming in, because he's going to cover for Thomas Partey and be that upgrade to Lokonga and El Neni. From what we believe, and not a lot of people have seen him, from what I've seen, he looks all right. I think somebody like going back in for Yuri Tielemans would be a good shout for Arsenal. And the reason I say that is because although I don't think Leicester will sell Maddison or Tielemans in January, he would probably be tempted, and we can start to at least negotiate something for the summer if it ain't going to happen in January. And the other player that a lot of people have said it's kind of done now, that ship sailed, Wilfred Zaha has made it very clear he's a massive gooner and wants to come to Arsenal. Now, I don't care if people believe he's done at 28, 29. I don't think he is, man. I've seen him play. He's still scoring goals. He's still one of the performers at Crystal Palace. He wins loads of fouls, can play right, left or forward, front 3 positions covered. And for me, a good player. Massive gooner, would love to come to Arsenal and like to finish his career there from what you're hearing in the sources that you read. I would take him because I don't think he's going to cost an unbelievable amount of money because his contract's up in the summer. So if we was to have a summer transfer window, we're not going to go and get Mitrovic, Tony, Abrahams. We're not going to get those type of lads because they're all at their clubs. They've got no reason to have to sell them unless we go and offer silly money, which we believe we probably haven't got. So for me, Danilo, Tielemans and Zaha would be a very good transfer window, Albert. What are you making of it?
It would be, you know, the Tielemans one's, it's interesting, man. I mean, if I speak from purely myself and not the sections of the fan base or social media, because I can't do that, to be honest, Dad. But listen, I said to you, man, I'd drive to Leicester to bring Tielemans, and with the situation, his contract situation is in, Dad, it just makes sense to me. Unless we don't know something where they've made some kind of negotiation for him to come in the summer or start pre-contract talks in January, right? To me, he's an obvious. Someone's mentioned in the chat, but I don't think we get him as the boy at Brighton. Casado is brilliant. But
yeah, good player.
Again, that would be difficult. I don't know what his contract situation is at Brighton, but he's excellent from what I've seen. The Zaha one's interesting. Was he in the final year? He must be in the final with his contract at Palace.
He is.
So I don't think that's completely out of the question. I know that kind of Zaha talk. I don't think, not necessarily that it bores the Arsenal fans, but either
no, you're right though. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. If he's going to come or he's not going to come. He would be a fantastic acquisition in the sense that he's very aggressive, Zaha. He's been in this league a long time, so he wouldn't have no team. He wouldn't need no time to adjust. The forward one's a difficult one because I think that's one position, Dan, especially in January, which is not impossible, but it's very difficult to acquire a striker. 100%. Everyone wants one. Top end, lower end of the league, stay in the league, mid-table, wherever it is. That's one difficult position, but it's not impossible. But yeah, the Zaha one's interesting. People mentioned Trossard in the chat as well, like Trossard.
Good player.
Casado would get me interested if obviously we didn't land Basuma. So Dan, there's options, man. There is whether they're the options as a fan that them players come into the club is another thing. But listen, I'm sure we will definitely revisit this conversation because Arsenal need to. You're right, Dan. Minimum 2 need to come in, if maximum 3, but minimum 2 I expect with January. 100%.
100, man. And, you know, Milinkovic, Savic and Danilo are being touted as rumours outside of the Premier League. Obviously, Vlahovic and Locatelli rumours were heating up last week. Yeah, I can't see that happening. I think that ship sailed personally. But I think personally, when you look at who's actually running out of their contract soon in terms of Trossard, Zaha, Tielemans, even Maddison's only got a year left on his contract after this season. I think it will get to that stage where we'll be impressed with what we've got. Smokey, big up yourself, bro. Hope you're well. Another super chat for Smokey. Says, Dan, did you see the pictures of Michael Elise and Wenger with Vieira? I think we should look at him instead of Zaha. What do you and Albert think? I'm a big fan of Michael Elise, bro. I really am. I think he looks sick. Man, absolutely wicked. And I think that the only reason that Zaha is the option is because he's going to be cheaper. It's mad. If you think Zaha is going to be expensive, Michael Elise will actually be more, in my opinion, for the pure fact that he's younger, got a higher ceiling. And he's absolutely killing it from what I can see. Just looks so special on that that left foot on the right hand side. And I think he would be a great signing, but I just can't see that one happening. What's your thoughts, Albert, on that one?
Yeah, I like the look of Elise. Listen, there's one player that I like, but I don't Arsenal. I think that ship sailed, and he's actually an Arsenal fan. It's Eze.
Yeah, good player.
But I don't think we get him. But yeah, Elise is a good shout, man. But you're right, Dan. I think Arsenal. I couldn't see that happening, man. I can't see Arsenal going through.
Yeah, man, it's going to be interesting. Before we wrap up, man, I want to ask you one question. If we do sign players in January, what are you expecting from Arsenal this season? And if we don't sign players in January, what are you expecting?
If they do address the issues, not just in terms of squad depth, but in the key areas we've been banging on about for this season and last season, I'd expect Arsenal to get top 3. If they don't address it, it could be a painful season. That simple.
I think it is that simple, man. I really do. If Arsenal do not strengthen in January, I do not expect us to win the Europa League, and I do not expect us to get into the top 4. If we do keep things really, in my opinion, tight and be that ruthless, go and get those guys that we need, I think we could be in for a really good season. I like the first 11. I think if we had strength in depth, we'd be able to add to that and bring on players when they were tired, replace Thomas Partey if he needs a rest, bring on somebody to take the pressure off of Jesus. We've seen Saka and Martinelli playing well, but there's no real backup for them at the moment. And like you say, if Gabriel gets a knock, who comes in at left centre back. All of those things could
Yeah.
be addressed. If they're not addressed, I think it could be a very interesting
Problems.
season. But listen, it ain't going to be doom and gloom. We're top of the league. We're top of the group. We're still in both competitions in domestic cups because we ain't played games there. So we could have a great season still. But I'm with you. Once this World Cup's done, we're going to be, in my opinion, if things go away, either first or second, right? That's the best and worst we can hope for. I think we can get to a stage where we can go into the World Cup, say, right, we've got a January transfer window here with a couple of players. We could really push Man City for a title. And I don't think we're going to win it, but we could at least be title challengers, and that will show unbelievable progress. So I'm with you, my guy. Listen, Albert, been an absolute pleasure, bro. Make sure you get over to Albert JTV. It's in the title, man. All you got to do is click the button, smash the subscription over on his channel. He's over 1K now, so make sure you help him grow, and make sure you smash a like and subscribe on this one and get me up to 6K, people. I'm at about 5.8K at the moment, so make sure you get me up to 6K, people. Come on, ain't gonna take long, I'm sure, man. Couple more videos and I should be there, so please help. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your super chats, and lastly, thank you, Albert, my bro. Thank you for coming on, mate.
Yeah, no, listen, the first time on the show, man, Friday night, man, you timed it well, Potsy, man.
Listen, you did your KFC and you're all good now, so you're settled.
Good, man.
It's good, bruv. Listen, always a pleasure, man. Make sure you go over to support Albert. Make sure you smash a like on your way out, people, and we'll see you next time. Until then, up the Arsenal. Take care.